What does it mean to be a human? Well, it means that you are made in the image of God. It means a lot of very special things. But what it isn't is that you're a mere clump of cells, or you don't have personhood if you're in the unborn population, or that we're animals. Okay. Some say, hey, wait a second. No, we're mammals. And therefore, we're equivalent to mammals. We're no better than other animals. But that assertion also comes with some assumptions. Comes with the assumption, then why should we be eating other animals? Okay, why don't we eat humans? Why is cannibalism unacceptable? So today I'm going to talk about some of these topics. And I'm also going to talk briefly about a video that I caught some of yesterday that I found a little disappointing, a little disturbing. And I saw that other people also found it disturbing. And I've got Converse Contender. Hi, Converse. And I can open this up again today as well. I've had some of you guys in here before. And so, hi, Mr. Parker. Good to see you guys. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. And I also want to ask you a question, just a little thought experiment. And I'm going to get to these questions. I've actually got a list of questions to ask you, and I've got a list of quotes from certain atheists that I found online to back up some of my assertions here, so that it wasn't like I was just speaking off the cuff without anybody's having said anything. So hi, Oliver. You guys are welcome here. And I'm going to, hold on just one second. Let me just share my screen to talk about what I saw yesterday in a video. Okay, so I saw this. So here, let me just fix this up a little bit. Okay, so I saw this. Actually, at first I caught it on Shannon Q's tweet feed. I don't know why I was looking at Shannon Q's tweet feed, but I was trying to pull quotations. And actually, I know that's exactly why I was looking at it. But I saw this particular debate, and she said that she couldn't even watch this debate because it was so upsetting. And other people were commenting that they didn't want to watch this debate either. And so I wanted to point out a couple of things that I found about this debate that were a bit disturbing. Okay, as Christians, we're called to do the right thing. Okay, we're called to, let me just fix my lighting here. We're called to treat people in very kind and loving ways. And that doesn't include calling other people illegals. Okay, so the woman at the top right in the blonde hair, she is apparently a political candidate. She's been trying to run for a political office in the past. The woman to her left is a gay woman who's actually married to a person who's an undocumented worker who came over the border, I guess, without any sort of legal rights to do so. But then she married this person. And so apparently the person on the right was really kind of tweeting about this, about her upsetness with this thing. The woman under the person on the left, the woman at the bottom, far bottom, she is a transgender woman, and the person to her right is a Christian. So the two on the right are Christians, and the two on the left are gay, non-Christians, or transgender. Okay, so they were having this discussion, and my main takeaway from this particular discussion is just to say, it's the most ideal thing as a Christian is you want to show a very loving way about you. The woman on the top right unfortunately came across and said some pretty unloving things as a Christian, and I think that that's one of the reasons why so many people have turned away from Christianity. In some cases, if you're in a place where people act like they're socially and morally superior to you, and they start calling you names and saying some mean things, and if you're in that kind of environment, that's going to breed hostility towards you and towards other Christians. And so that's just one thing that I caught in this video I wanted to comment on. Now, I want to give a couple of quotations that I found from a few atheists. So here's what Richard Dawkins says. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces, and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely no properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. This is really kind of a very sad position to take. And it's also a sad position to think we have no design, no purpose. I mean, scientists can look into the universe and look at its structure and tell that much of it's ordered. You can look at our DNA. Our DNA has been well ordered. These little letters, A, C, G, T, these have been ordered inside of us, and there's 3.2 billion of them. Okay, you wouldn't say that a book just wrote itself, so why would you say our DNA coded itself? That's just silly. On Godless Granny's channel, I saw Matt Dillahunty make this comment. Human life has no intrinsic value with or without a God. Value is imbued and subjective, and not even a God can make it and intrinsic value. Now, of course, I disagree vehemently with both of these. I got another quote from Shannon Q on Twitter. She says, yeah, I don't think that happened, Lal, and we're totally animals. I can't see any justification to not classify as such. And then Fyodor Dostoevsky said, there existed, now he was referring in his brothers, Karamazov, to these two brothers. He was referring to the atheist brother named Ivan in this book. And he said, there exists no law of nature that man should love mankind. And that if there is and has been any love on earth up to now, it has come not from natural law, but from solely people's belief in their mortality. Not only that, but then nothing would be immoral any longer. Everything would be permitted, even anthropophagy, which is cannibalism. The moral law of nature ought to change immediately into the exact opposite of the former religious law. And that egoism, even to the point of evil doing, should not only be permitted to man, but should be acknowledged as the necessary, the most reasonable, and all that the noblest result of his situation. Imagine thinking that way. Here was Schuyler Fiction. Now, see, a lot of these atheists, they'll claim that we don't have objective moral values and duties to do what's right. Now, that's pretty silly. That's saying that humans don't share this transcendent conscience that tells us that we should be just, fair, honest. Okay, we do have that. You try waking up in the morning, and when you do, sometimes you address your conscience, sometimes shaming you in your mind for something that you did the night before or the day before. Okay, that's how it is. Your conscience is always sort of clicking at you like a little Jiminy Cricket sitting on your shoulder. So he says, it's wrong under my subjective moral system. Well, imagine saying that to people during communist overtaking in China that's going on right now, and the Uyghur population. Imagine saying that to some Russian who was locked up in a prison unjustly just because his neighbor ratted on him for being supposedly against the political system. Imagine saying, well, there's no justice. It's just up to me. It's just to me and not just to you. And what happened in World War II is not just to me, but it's just to you. Okay, imagine thinking that. Now going, as Jordan Peterson said, he just said, try going against your conscience. See how that works out for you over time. I think that was a pretty good thing. Now in Romans 2:15, it says, they show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometime accusing them, and at other times even defending them. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law into their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Because we have a transcendent conscience, and that's what draws us to do things that are right for our other fellow humans. And that's a pretty good thing. So I'm going to step back here. I've got a few more slides, but I'm going to step back right now and come back to the chat just to say hi. I want to say hi to Jamie Russell, hi to Mr. Parker, and hi to others. So yeah, so we've got a little interesting chat going on. So let me come back and share some more of this. Okay. Okay, so I want to ask you some thought questions. You guys think about these and try to answer them in the chat. These are some thought questions. Okay, so here we go. If we're merely animals, what prevents us from being cannibals? All right, think about that. If we're no better than animals, why should we be able to lock up other animals at the zoo? What gives us that right if we're just animals? Why do turtle eggs and eagle eggs have more rights to exist than the human unborn? Okay, 14 years, eagles have been off the endangered list since 2007. Why do those little eggs have more rights than our unborn? Okay, some people are even talking about legalizing third trimester abortions. You even have crazies like the governor of South Carolina or Peter Singer thinking that infanticide is perfectly acceptable if the parents don't want to take care of the baby. It's ridiculous. You know, for every baby put up for adoption in the United States to a private adoption agency, there are over 30 couples waiting to adopt them. So is personhood magically conferred at some arbitrary date during pregnancy or in the birth canal? All right, think about that. How do you decide when a person is a person? Now, I decide, according to my moral laws and what seems very right, is a person at conception. It's like Dr. Seuss, who people who are crazy are trying to ban. You know, they'll ban Dr. Seuss, but then they allow these pedophile movies like Cuties to be aired. Okay, the same people who would ban Dr. Seuss and talk about banning Dumbo and talk about banning certain characters like Pepe Gonzalez and Pepe Le Pew, or no, Speedy Gonzalez and Pepe Le Pew. I mean, these are the same people who are perfectly acceptable, who think it's perfectly acceptable to make sexualize young kids, 12-year-old. That makes a lot of sense. Not, okay, that's so ridiculous. It's going on right now. Cancel culture is really bad for a lot of reasons. One is it's because it could take us back to how, if we don't remember our history and we erase our history, we're going to repeat our history, okay? In some of Dr. Seuss's books, apparently he had some images that appeared racist, and maybe Dr. Seuss was a racist at the time he wrote those books. But that's part of our history, just going around the speech police and pretending that you are going to let people read what you want them to read and not let them read what they want to read. That happens to be the way that the general public operated in a particular time period. That's absurd. All right. So abortion, again, we know from 1973 till today, 60 million babies have been aborted, and a very large portion of those have been African Americans or Black Americans. Okay, so we have a lot of people who've been aborted. We could have a much better population, a much more diverse population if we didn't have all of these abortions. Now, someone in the audience probably right now is writing, well, wait a second, what about? There's always the what about. What about the rapists and the incest and that kind of thing? That's 1%. We don't legislate based on the exceptions, okay? For example, if we say murder is wrong, but what about murder in self-defense? Well, that's an exception. In self-defense, you might have to protect yourself. It's only 1%, less than 1% of the cases are rape and incest. So making a law based on that less than 1% is absurd. Okay, certainly you can make possibly exceptions, but don't make the law based on the exception. So why do we lock other animals up at the zoo? Who gave us that right? And another question, is our conscience transcendent to us? If so, its source must be transcendent. Your conscience is calling you out. A lot of times when you feel grief, you feel shame, you feel upset with something, your conscience a lot of times speaks to you in certain ways, okay? Yes, it's transcendent. God is transcendent to us, and God is the one who implanted that law. So here's some moral axioms that most people in their right mind understand to be true. Okay, so this is what our Declaration of Independence and our founding father said. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Here's what the UN Declaration of Human Rights said, which has been translated into over 500 languages. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Okay, so that's something we're just noticing and making it, it's a moral axiom. We have a collective conscience. We have a conscience. That's why the world cried out in horror after seeing some of the atrocities in Nazi Germany. Here's what Paul said. We're all created equal. This goes all the way back to Jesus. He says, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you all one in Christ Jesus. Okay, so a lot of our moral rules and our legal rules and a lot of things do stem from Christianity. And for that, we should be very thankful. The best place to be for a female is in Western societies. As a female, I have great rights. If you live in Saudi Arabia, you were just granted the right to drive a couple years ago. It's outrageous, completely outrageous. If you're in China, watch out if you're a Uyghur in China. What happened in China is pretty bad. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. Here's some more quotes from atheists on Twitter. So Aaron Ross says, each of my children was born a monkey and a mammal and a vertebrate deuterostome animal. Okay, here's what Jim Major says. And you got to love how this special creation is made out of meat. God made us to be delicious to other animals. So I just thought that one was kind of funny. And then Prophet of Zod, he says, why are atheists criticized for saying, I don't know about the universe's origins by people who say it's beyond our human comprehension about God? Okay, so it's the whole thing is, a lot of people do think it's beyond our human comprehension. God is something that we can't comprehend. That's actually written in the Bible. But God is also, we're made in God's image, and we have a manifestation of God in Jesus. And so Jesus is not beyond our human comprehension. We've got a whole book about him, lots of books about him. In fact, he's he is the person who's the most popular in the entire world, the most known person in the entire world over time. More books have been written about Jesus than any other person who walked the earth. So some more biblical wisdom. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. Another thing, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Psalm 104 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. But you remember what God did. In Genesis 1, it talks about how God spoke the universe into existence. God has speech. Humans have speech. Humans are unique in a lot of ways. We're exceptional. Cy Gart, who's a biologist, has made that very clear. Humans are exceptional in the animal kingdom. We're an exception. We're made in the image of God, and animals are not made in God's image. We have the capability to put together very sophisticated language and to understand abstract concepts and to understand and apprehend beauty and art. We have some really unique, wonderful qualities, and we owe it to God. Now, here's what Brian Brainbug said. I was listening to this Godless Granny's Why Are We Here video, and it was funny because I did a little word search. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I did a word search, and I looked for the word meaning, and I looked for the word purpose. And one of them was a hit, but it didn't fit into the context of what I was looking for. There's an ultimate meaning and a greater purpose to our existence. So here's what Brian Brainbug thinks. Yeah, okay, and I'm like, man, it's taught, so yeah, what we need to do is the only thing that's going to change any of that is education and breaking these people away from these unhealthy traditions, which is basically what it comes down to. They're conserving these traditions that have no purpose other than making traditions, and it's dragging us all down. It's really scary to Brian Brainbug. Okay, so these are what I would call efforts to dehumanize. A lot of them, trying to break down our traditions. Our traditions are something that we are benefiting from here in the West. We're benefiting from some really great laws that give us independence and property rights and consider all humans equal. We've got tremendous benefits coming from Christianity. If you don't think so, read Tom Holland's book on Christianity. Read his book on Dominion. It's a really good book. And so let's think about these efforts to dehumanize that we're seeing in society today and in the past. So Nazi propaganda equated Jews with rats. Why'd they do that? They dehumanized them so that they could justify the egregious slaughter that they performed. Abortionist propaganda equates the unborn with clumps of cells, or D&C, tissue in non-persons. They equate the murder of the unborn as terminations of pregnancies. I know this firsthand. That's what they told me I could do. When they found out my son had 2 soft markers for Down syndrome, the nurse said rather blithely, yes, you can just terminate the pregnancy if it turns out when your amnio gets back and he has Down syndrome. And I thought, a whore, how could you refer to my son, whose little body I could see, his little arms and legs and his cute little body, I could completely see, and they were telling me I could just go and yank that body out of my body. Okay, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. The Dred Scott decision. Here's another example of our egregious past. It was the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on March 6, 1857, that having lived in a free state and territory did not entitle a slaved person, Dred Scott, to his freedom. In essence, the decision argued that as someone's property, Scott was not a citizen and could not sue in a federal court. Communists sacrificed human lives for the collective. Read about the Gulag Archipelago if you don't think that's the case. They routinely went around killing people, not minding that people were starving. In fact, they intentionally had people starve in the Ukraine. Individuals have no value or property rights in some communist or formerly communist countries. And here's what my last slide is before I come back to the chat. It's just a cultural norm in China to be able to take 1.8 million Uyghurs, who are ethnic Muslims, and lock them up in concentration camps. The Uyghurs have reported that their goal is to destroy everyone. There's systematic rape. There's all kinds of brutality going on. And why isn't the world calling out against this? What is going on? Seriously, this is very, very sick. And so we need to think about, as a world, why aren't we saying anything? So I want to say hi to people in the chat. So I'm coming back in here and I say, I see Jamie Russell and Slam RN and Isaiah 53 Learning. And who else do I see here? And Jamie's made a lot of, and Mania, Michael, the Canadian Atheist. We got a lot of good people here in the chat. So thank you guys so much for stopping by today. So again, what I wanted to address is these efforts that we're seeing today to dehumanize us. And plastic Jesus, that must be another believer, right? No, so we need to make sure that we pay attention to this sort of stuff. We need to do more than we're doing right now. You know, I heard something today from Bishop Barron, and I listen to him occasionally, even though I'm not a Catholic. I find his work is very interesting and very enlightening. So I spent some time listening, and he said if you went back to the 1970s, according to the Pew polls, 3% of people identified as unaffiliated with a religion. Only 3%. And then he said, skip forward to 1991, and suddenly 6% were claiming to be unaffiliated. Nuns, the religious nuns. Okay, my parents are religious nuns. They're unaffiliated. They chose to leave the Catholic Church, and they never went back to any church. In fact, I'd say my dad is downright hostile towards churches because he gets upset with some of the actions of the priests in the Catholic Church. That's where we were raised. But today, the numbers are truly scary, okay? 26% of Americans identify as religious nuns today. And Bishop Barron broke it down and took a look at what about people who are under 30? Well, he said apparently it's 40% of people who are under 30 are religious nuns. And then he went and looked at the Catholic youth, the Catholics under 30. And he found that 50% of Catholics under 30 are religious nuns. Okay, that is huge. And why is that? Okay, so one thing the Catholics need to do, and I'm just going to call them out for this, they need to fix the mess that they have in the church if they haven't done it yet. Now, I haven't heard of them fixing it. I actually haven't heard of any recent scandals in the Catholic Church, which is when the priests were taking advantage of altar boys and doing things like that. But they have to address that. They have to be very serious about that, okay, if they want to attract people. Another thing we need to be very serious about is not acting like that woman in the video that I just showed you at the outset. Okay, you don't want to be the Christian self-righteous prig. God doesn't like the Christian self-righteous prig. Okay, he doesn't want you to act like that and belittle other people. You know, she referred to this woman's husband as an illegal. She just kept calling him an illegal. Just use your language right. Call him an undocumented worker, call him something like that. But to call people illegal just is kind of a dehumanizing thing. Okay, I would say that apparently it's Republicans' number one concern right now is immigration. And apparently many more people have been immigrated into the United States since Biden's gotten into office. Apparently there are something like 3,200 children who are being detained right now in those cages that Joe Biden said he wasn't going to have. Okay, so that's more than apparently that was. I think it's, from what I understand, it's about double of what it was. Think about that. So why is it double? He sort of opened the doors. Now, one of the reasons that Democrats open the doors to immigration is because they figure the people, once they come into our country, eventually will assimilate and then end up maybe voting for them or having kids in this country. And then the kids will be born here, naturalized citizens, and then the kids will go ahead and vote for the Democrats. So that's why the Democrats actually are encouraging immigration. Now, Republicans are against immigration mainly because they feel like it's a violation of order. Okay, they feel like they want order, they want rules, and they want laws. And obviously, if people are coming in here without any sort of legal protections, they're coming in illegally. And that goes against our laws. Okay, so other countries have borders. Other countries have laws like ours on immigration. And so it's not unusual to have these laws. Now, I would make an argument that I would say we should probably try to figure out a path to citizenship for the 12 million undocumented workers currently living and working here in the United States. But we do need to keep our walls. I mean, we do need to keep our borders tight because you want people to follow the legal pathways. There are legal means to get in this country. And speaking of people who are legally in this country, and I have to mention Meghan Markle, okay, and Prince Harry. I found that so bad. If you haven't watched that, Meghan Markle goes onto Oprah Winfrey's channel. Now, Meghan Markle is 25% Black, okay? She's 25% Black. She goes on Oprah Winfrey's channel and she says that somebody in the royal house made comments about the skin color, the potential skin color of her unborn child before he was born. I'm forgetting the name of her unborn child. Made some sort of comments about what color would his skin be or something like that. And then later on, Harry said, well, no, it wasn't the Queen Mother. It wasn't the Queen Father. It wasn't anyone like that. So he's leaving open, could it be Prince Charles? Could it be Camilla? Could it be his brother or his brother's wife? I mean, who was it? Who said this? But then I just saw this morning in the news that Harry now is saying that the castle, people in the castle, they aren't racist. Okay. The thing that Meghan Markle did that I think is really, imagine if a family takes you in, you marry into a family, and then you go on national television to try to make them look bad. She said that her son didn't have, or her son's name Archie. Archie didn't have he wasn't going to be getting some of the titles that others were getting. Well, apparently the rule for titles was passed in 1917. So they were just following the rules that they had passed in 1917. Okay. So a lot of the things that they were doing, they were complaining about how they'd been cut off from the royals. Well, apparently they have $25 million. That's not too shabby. And apparently they live in a $14 million house in Los Angeles. Okay, they have it pretty good. They didn't want to do some of the royal duties, so Meghan Markle convinced Harry to move. Now, this is a princess who's worth millions of dollars, who has millions of dollars, who's complaining about being a victim. What about the true victims? If we're exalting victimhood status, we really need to take a look at our culture. It's getting to be a bit messed up. We should be exalting heroes. I just heard on the news a couple of minutes ago that there's a Tampa police driver, and he saw a man driving one way down the highway, the wrong way. Okay. He saw a man driving the wrong way. So rather than let that man keep going, the man was drunk driving, rather than let him keep going, he swerved and hit his car to stop him. Both of them ended up dying. Now that police officer is a selfless sacrificer. I mean, he made the most selfless sacrifice that anyone could possibly make. He gave his life to save the lives of others. That person is a hero. Meghan Markle, not so much. Meghan Markle is playing the victim. She's worth millions of dollars, and you've got a policeman who does something really amazing like that. That's a truly amazing person. So would anyone like to, let's see some of these questions here. What about, when people try to misquote me and do things like that and try to paint me as a different person, Mr. Parker, one of the reasons why I have you sitting and pending in my Twitter account is because I don't like the fact that I looked on your timeline and saw that you were going to, it's very strange that you were making accusations about me that I feel are unsubstantiated. And so that's one of the reasons why you're still in the pending holding zone. Okay. So just letting you know, I've got you and 16 others in the holding pattern. And I have that because of the way that I've seen that those same people either treat me or because the account that they have is brand new, like a brand new account that was just formed on the same day that I closed my other Twitter account. Seems a little sketchy to me. So it's just, I'm sure you can, Mr. Parker. Okay, so the phrasing, I accidentally said a he or a she on a case of somebody, and so he's saying I've misgendered them. So this is the kind of thing that's coming from the left. And speaking of the left, just remember how the Communist Party left it. Okay, so just take note of some of the things that we saw in places like the Gulag Archipelago. We don't want to return to that. We don't want to be. We need to be concerned about places like China that can just willingly take 1.8 million Uyghurs and throw them into concentration camps to re-educate them, sterilize them, rape them, torture them, and do all sorts of other things. Okay, so we need to take care of that and make note. So you guys, thank you so much for coming in today. I hope that you'll like and subscribe and do come again. And just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Thank you. Bye-bye.